Previously on Danganronpa Previously on Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. Hina finds one of Chihiro's relics, alter ego, an AI program, in one of the school laptops. Taka and Ifumi obsess over it due to possible past trauma. Meanwhile, Celeste, convinces Hifumi to kill Taka and then she kills him afterwards, all due to greed. Thankfully, she gets caught. Kyoko finds a secret room with a bunch of files, and when Makoto investigates, he gets knocked out and all the files disappear. He also walks in on Sakura and Monokuma fighting, and they let slip that Sakura might be the spy. Is she, though? Well, let's find out on this episode of Breaking It Down. Or Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. I don't even know the title anymore. Let's just go. Gear up, because this story's about to take a turn. Chapter 4, All-Star Apologies, opens on everyone, except for Byakuya and Toko, of course, in the dining hall lamenting on everyone that's died so far. Which, now that I think about it, we're down to less than half now. Makoto's also trying to figure out if Sakura's really the spy, or if he was just hallucinating things last night due to being knocked out. Kyoko suggests that they should explore the new areas after eating, and Hina and Hiro heartily agree and are motivated to continue onward. Hiro even predicts that there's not going to be any more murders because the spirits told him. Yeah, we're only about halfway through the game, and his fortune telling's only about 20 to 30% accurate on a good day. I wouldn't hold him to it. The next area that's unlocked is the 4th floor of Hope's Peak. Included is a music room, which is actually more of a concert hall. Makoto finds Kyoko in there and explains what happened in the secret room last night. Kyoko takes the files missing surprisingly well. She also says that she was trying to see if the mastermind knew about that room and kinda suspected that they would go after Makoto. Gee, thanks for looking out for us. Kyoko also realizes that due to the files missing, there must have been some very important clue related to the mastermind's identity. When Makoto brings up the "you must not leave" note, Kyoko silences him because they're still being watched, but she did say that she's looking into it. Kyoko then asks if Makoto's hiding something because he's been a bit fidgety. Makoto doesn't have enough evidence to accuse Sakura of being the spy, so he lets Kyoko know that he can't quite tell her yet. To which Kyoko gets angry that Makoto doesn't trust her enough and she leaves. You nearly got Makoto killed and you're blaming him for not trusting you. Up next is an office, which honestly looks more like a botanist's wet dream. He looks on the floor and finds another picture. This time with Sayaka, Taeko, and Ifumi, and again with no metal plates over the windows. Monokuma shows up and snatches the picture again, claiming that it is real and not photoshopped since Makoto had his doubts. On the 4th floor is also the headmaster's room, which is locked of course. There's also the data center, which is locked as well. One area that does open up is the chem lab. There's a whole bunch of medicine that wasn't available before, such as vitamins, minerals, even a top quality protein drink that gets Hina and Sakura excited. Makoto heads back to the dining hall. I wonder how many times I've mentioned the dining hall now. It's gotta be a lot. That's actually less than I thought it was. Anyway, Makoto heads back to the dining hall and meets with everyone there. Hiro also noticed the locked doors as well, but he thinks Sakura could break them down. To which Monokuma shows up and adds to the school regulations that you can't break down a locked door. Sakura believes that that means that something important is in both of those rooms. Hina talks about the chem lab, and on top of all the nutrients and supplements, there's also a bunch of different poisons as well. Sakura also points out that, yet again, there were metal sheets attached to all the windows on the 4th floor. Kyoko is still upset and won't say anything, so yeah, a lot of help there. Makoto then shares about the picture he found in the office, which leads to a debate on whether that picture is real or not. And then Kyoko gets heated towards Makoto when he starts believing that it could be real because Monokuma told him so. Their argument is interrupted by Byakuya being his usual jackass self, saying he discovered a vital clue while taking a bath, which prompts everyone else to go and take a bath as well. They go to the bathhouse and see Toko there watching Alter Ego under strict orders from Byakuya not to move until he gets back. Which makes me confused as to who's more creepy, obsessed Toko or the literal serial killer. Speaking of which, she turns into Genocide Jill and still won't budge. After some convincing, she moves over to the side and lets them interact with Alter Ego. And finally, we get some good news. Alter Ego was able to crack open the files stored on the computer. So what was on the files? Well, one important thing that was found there was that a plan was put into effect at Hope's Peak to isolate the students of Hope's Peak Academy and create a communal life for them. But it's more than that. The goal was to let the students live out the rest of their lives here, which is exactly what Monokuma has been wanting this whole time. And the ones who came up with the plan? The administrators of Hope's Peak Academy themselves. But supposedly they had a good reason. Something terrible had happened about a year prior. Something so awful that they labeled it the biggest, most awful, most tragic event in human history. Look, either something happened that was worse than the Holocaust, or the administrators went a little overboard. But let's be honest, when did Hope's Peak ever go overboard? Every chance they got, cool. Okay, they do have another name for it. The tragedy. Apparently, this tragedy forced Hope's Peak to close down. Alter Ego can't elaborate any more on this though, due to there not being any more info regarding that situation on the computer. But Alter Ego did find a small clue possibly relating to the Mastermind's identity. Apparently, the one who finalized the isolation plan was the headmaster of Hope's Peak, who, based off of the files, is a man in his late 30s. And it seems likely that he could still be in the school at this very moment. This actually visibly shakes Kyoko for some reason, vowing to actually find the headmaster by any means necessary. Kyoko lets Alter Ego know that it did a good job, which Alter Ego is grateful for, and then enters sleep mode. Makoto believes at this point we should start calling Alter Ego a friend because even though he's an AI, he seems just as human as the rest of them. This lifts up their spirits as they realize the more the merrier, especially in a situation like this. Everyone then realizes something. None of them had ever heard of a tragic event on a large scale as was described to them. Hina believes that maybe they covered something up, which is plausible. I mean, all this is going on, so... They leave the bathhouse and find Monokuma waiting for them, deciding to go full cryptic again. He says something about an eye for an eye, and anything done to him will be dealt right back. Before he can elaborate, though, he leaves and the nighttime alarm goes off. Everyone heads to bed, still anxious. The next morning, surprisingly, Toko joins everyone for breakfast, but not really because she wants to hang out or anything, she just wants to eat more because Byakuya told her he likes girls with meat on their bones. And knowing Byakuya, he just said that to get her out of his face. Kyoko's also not there because... the same bullshit as before. Yeah, I know I'm interrupting again, but let me tell you, this, right here, this is one of my least favorite story tropes of all time. Misunderstandings. Or at least when it comes to drama. It feels way too forced most of the time, and it just pisses me off because if they would just talk for 2 f***ing minutes, they would be able to clear everything up. Oh, and on top of that, everyone thinks Makoto's in the wrong here. Anyway, rant over, back to the story.
What the hell is even that?
Well, Toko's gonna be in my nightmares tonight. Again. Thankfully, Sakura snaps her out of it by threatening her. She should know that that's over. Can we go back to the actual story? Please? Makoto asks Sakura to meet with her later, and she says it'll have to wait until the next day because she's tired. Yeah, tired from all that bullshit you've been doing. As they're about to eat, Toko gets nervous because ever since she was a kid, she would eat by herself, even away from her dad and 2 moms. You know, with 3 parents in the house, you'd think at least one of them would notice their child turning into a literal serial killer. Then again, for a child to develop another personality, let alone genocide Jill, it kind of suggests things weren't going very good at home in the first place. Later in the day, Monokuma makes an announcement asking everyone to head to the gym. Makoto makes his way there, but before he enters, he runs into Sakura, who seems a little uneasy. She looks like she wants to tell Makoto something, but she heads in before she could get it out. Once in the gym, Monokuma shows up, but this time he's not giving out a motive. This time he's there to say, Sakura's the spy. No heavy build-up, nothing. Just, Sakura's the spy. Have you been taking lessons from Byakuya? And he also states that if Sakura doesn't fulfill her promise, he can't guarantee the safety of the hostage, whoever that is. Sakura decides a smart thing to do is to fess up. Everyone seems to have a tough time believing it, but Makoto reveals to everyone what he saw the previous night. Byakuya doesn't trust Sakura anymore and asks her to prove herself. He asks who the mastermind is and what was this promise that was spoken of. She says she doesn't even know who the mastermind is and that the promise was to kill someone. Sakura also says that she has to take responsibility for lying to everyone, and by that she means destroy the mastermind, even if both of them die. She apologizes to Hina for not confiding in her and leaves the gym. Even though Hina's still upset, she and everyone else head to bed for the night. The next morning, everyone except for Sakura's in the dining hall. But of course, Byakuya and Toko are not there for communal purposes. They're there to hide from Sakura. Hina and Byakuya start arguing about Sakura, but Kyoko questions as to why Monokuma ratted out Sakura at this point in time. While part of it may be for revenge against the fight, Kyoko also thinks that the reveal was actually the next motive. Because when you think about it, everyone's currently reacting the same way as to when a motive is presented. There's confusion, chaos, suspicion, even hatred. It's crazy how fragile everything is. Hina's desperate to make everyone see that Sakura's not a bad person. Byakuya doesn't seem to care anymore, even going so far as to say that if Sakura were to die fighting the mastermind, well, that's just one less person for the mastermind to manipulate. This earns a long overdue slap from Hina. She even goes so far as threatening to kill him. Which I would condone, but then I'd be just like Byakuya. It's difficult. Kyoko reminds Hina that killing is what Sakura doesn't want. Hina cools down a little and leaves. Kyoko scolds Byakuya because of his dismissal of others' feelings, which Byakuya shrugs off, of course. The next morning, Makoto wakes up to someone screaming. He rushes to the dining hall and finds Genocide Jill attacking Hina. After getting Hina out of there, Makoto and Hiro take her to the nurse's office. Thankfully, she only suffered a few scratches, but knowing Genocide Jill, it could have been a lot worse. As for what happened, Toko had apparently started pushing Hina's buttons by talking shit about Sakura, and Hina lashed out, causing them to knock over the pepper on the table, which in turn caused Toko to sneeze and turn into Genocide Jill, who then overpowered Hina. Hina starts to cry when Sakura bursts through the door and asks what happened. When they tell her, she gets pissed that someone attacked Hina, her very close friend. No, we're not doing that again, the joke's already played out. But not her. Sakura's anger causes Hiro to freak out and run away, but then Kyoko appears at the commotion. Sakura cools down and says that she's drawing a line, but she leaves before she elaborates further and Hina chases after her. So now it's just Makoto and Kyoko. Makoto starts to talk to her about earlier and she, acknowledges that he was looking out for Sakura. She doesn't quite forgive him, in fact she accuses him of being arrogant for not trusting her, but she does admit she may have overreacted.
Wow, really? I didn't notice at all.
But she really wants to put it behind her because she wants to show Makoto something. She leads him to the bathhouse where they find Alter Ego. Alter Ego wanted to see both of them to ask if they could connect him to somewhere in the school network. He wants to keep being helpful to everyone, and he thinks that connecting to the school network may be able to uncover more info about the place. Makoto's worried that Alter Ego's going on a suicide mission because the mastermind could easily find out about him. Alter Ego's still standing firm in his decision, though, as he wants to do this for everyone. Kyoko suggests that they do it because this is the only way they can find new clues at this rate. But also because she, like Makoto, is starting to see Alter Ego as a real person and a friend, and that they should take his feelings into consideration, especially since he doesn't like standing by while everyone else tries to find a way out. Makoto reluctantly agrees to help Alter Ego out and stuffs a laptop in his jacket. They then go to the secret room because Kyoko saw an Ethernet outlet in there. She pretends to be mad about the missing documents to distract the mastermind while Makoto goes inside and sets everything up. He finds a network cable and hooks Alter Ego up to the Ethernet outlet. Alter Ego's all good to go now. Makoto leaves him with a promise that everyone's gonna get out, even Alter Ego, because they're friends. Alter Ego appreciates being called a friend and gets to work. Makoto leaves Alter Ego to do his thing and meets Kyoko back out in the hall. After assuring her everything's fine, they leave. Makoto heads back to his room and takes a nap. But he is woken up by Kyoko. She said that Hina had come to see her and that she was incredibly pale. Hina's waiting for everyone in the rec room, so they head up there. Once there, Hina's still freaking out as she points to the door leading to the rec room. Makoto sees through the door that Sakura's just sitting there menacingly. Hina says she was walking past the room when she saw Sakura and tried calling out to her, but she wouldn't respond. Hina also couldn't get the door open either. Kyoko suggests breaking down the door, which is not a good idea because of the new rule Monokuma put in place. But Kyoko said that the rec room doesn't have a lock on it, and it feels like something was pressed against the door from inside the room. Hina finds a broom to smash the window in with, which Makoto promptly does. The window shatters and he's able to open the door after moving the object out of the way. They enter the room and, well, you know the drill by now. Yep, Sakura's dead. Hina, still not quite fully processing what's happening, goes to get the others. Kyoko begins to inspect the body while Makoto's just there, still in shock. Hina arrives with everyone else and immediately begins to accuse all three of them of murdering Sakura. Monokuma shows up and questions her accusations before Makoto asks Monokuma if he himself killed her. He denies that he did and even realizes that he had forgotten to punish her for attacking him the other night. He then hands out the next Monokuma file and leaves. Hina offers to stand guard while Byakuya forces Kyoko to also stand guard.
Oh, a little pushy there, boy. Please, for the love of God, I hope you're the murderer.
In response to that, Hina doesn't let Byakuya, Toko, and Hiro near the crime scene because, again, she thinks it was one of them. Byakuya offers a compromise. He gets to investigate the crime scene, Toko and Hiro still aren't allowed to, and he doesn't get to touch Sakura's body. Hina very reluctantly agrees to this as they begin to investigate. The Monokuma file this time reads, "The victim was Sakura Ogami. The time of death is estimated to be around 12 noon. The body was discovered in the rec room on the 3rd floor of the school. There is evidence of a strong blow to the victim's head. No other injuries were noted. However, it seems that at some point the victim suffered from violent vomiting of blood." Kyoko admits that this time the case might be challenging because the door is the only way in and out of the rec room, and that door was jammed from the inside, which would make it very hard for the killer to leave the room. With that, they begin to investigate. Makoto spots a candy wrapper on the floor next to Sakura. Hina says that she had found a whole stash of those candies in the warehouse and loved it so much that she took it to her room so no one else could get to them. Hina did, however, give one to Sakura to help calm her down after she found out Genocide Jill attacked Hina. Behind Sakura's seat are some broken shards of glass. The glass seems to have once been a red-tinted bottle of some sort. Makoto also finds a Monokuma chess figure on the floor next to it. On top of the cabinet close to the glass shards are 4 other red-tinted bottles with Monokuma chess figures inside of them as well. Makoto summarizes that the broken bottle may have been used to hit Sakura over the head. Makoto finds a bloodstain over by the magazine shelf, which is strange considering it's pretty far from where Sakura died. He also notices that the locker is now open and finds a few handprints inside. Kyoko says it looks pretty fresh, which leads Makoto to think that maybe the killer was in the room with Sakura, and when the body was discovered, the killer blended in with all the ensuing chaos. Kyoko says that's not possible because when they tried to break down the door earlier, the locker was already open. Makoto notices that by the entrance of the room, there's an empty protein drink bottle. Kyoko assumes that the container belonged to Sakura, and Makoto notices that this specific protein drink came from the chem lab. Kyoko also notices that there are pieces of shattered glass, not just around the container, but underneath it as well. She doesn't quite know what it means yet, but they should remember that just in case.
I mean, she's 3 for 3 in taking small clues and turning the entire case around, so yeah, I'd keep that in mind.
Makoto takes a look at Sakura's body and does notice there is a small streak of blood coming from her mouth. While it may not be related to the blow in the head, he does believe that the vomiting blood may have something to do with her death. After examining the door and the chair, Makoto determines that there was no tampering with either of them. No mechanisms to pull the chair against the door from the outside or anything like that. Which means that the killer locked the room from the inside. Hina also shares some interesting evidence. She and Sakura parted ways after they had both calmed down from the nurse's office. When they saw each other again later that morning, Sakura told Hina that she had asked Byakuya, Toko, and Hiro to meet her in the rec room at noon, the time she died.
Okay, so her accusations are a little more than just hysterics. That's actually a bit reasonable. Though we have had some sort of red herring since chapter 2, so I can't quite confirm those accusations yet.
Hina tried to stop Sakura from meeting them, but Sakura was too stubborn. Byakuya confirms that he did receive a note from Sakura, but he didn't follow through with it for fear of his life and claims to have not seen Sakura at all today. Well, we got no choice but to believe him right now, so yeah, great. Kyoko suggests talking with Toko and Hiro since they were both invited as well. Toko says she didn't go for the same reasons that Byakuya didn't. Hiro, on the other hand, actually received the note from Sakura in person, but when Makoto asks to see the note, he claims not to have it and all of a sudden backtracks and claims he hasn't seen her since the nurse's office.
I'd say suspicious, but considering how the last trial went, he could just be an idiot.
However, Makoto notices one of those same candy wrappers from earlier falling from one of Hiro's pockets. Hiro quickly snatches it up and heads back into his room before Makoto can say anything else.
Again, idiot or suspicious, hard to tell.
Makoto then heads up to the chem lab area and finds a whole bunch of powder spilled in front of one of the cabinets. Oh, and Byakuya too, I guess. It appears to have come from a broken bottle labeled Chem C4 with a nice little skull and crossbones printed on it. Byakuya points out that he was up in the chem lab earlier that morning and the room wasn't this messy. In the powder are some footprints in front of the left shelf. They appear to only go to that shelf and none of the other ones. Byakuya forces Makoto to take off his shoes and see if his footprints match up with the ones on the floor. Thankfully, they don't. But since the prints are pretty clear, it shouldn't be too hard to figure out whose it is. Makoto looks at the shelf the footprints are in front of and notices that everything in there is a dietary supplement, which may be where the protein drink came from. They're all labeled A and whatever number, so this could be considered shelf A. Except for the one on the left, which happens to be labeled C9. Shelf B contains reagent chemicals, essentially chemicals that are used for chemical reaction experiments. Shelf C, if you haven't guessed by now, is a bunch of dangerous chemicals and poisons. And of course, Makoto is wondering what one of those bottles was doing in Shelf A. Makoto heads back to the rec room to tell Kyoko everything he's found so far. Once he does, Kyoko informs him that she found new clues as well. First, the magazine shelf where all the blood is. There's a magazine on the shelf that's flipped upside down, and when Makoto opens it up, he finds Toko's name written in blood inside. Kyoko also explains that the magazine was upside down when she found it and put it back on the shelf that way. Hina gets suspicious of Toko, but Makoto is starting to catch on to these mysteries and realizes that it seems too easy. Second, the Monokuma bottles. She wants to compare the weights between the broken pieces and the intact bottles. Kyoko says that there's some correlation between them, but Makoto can't quite figure it out. She asks Makoto to sweep up all the broken pieces while she goes to the chem lab to grab a scale. First, they compare the intact bottles, which weigh the same. Then they put the broken pieces on there and it's heavier.
Which, if I remember 5th grade chemistry right, doesn't seem to make sense. The broken pieces should either be lighter than the intact bottle because Makoto may have missed some pieces, or it should be even with the bottle.
Makoto keeps that in mind as he moves on to the third new piece of evidence, Sakura's body. Makoto is still squeamish about having to examine a dead body and wonders aloud to Kyoko how she's able to do all this. She says it's because she's had opportunities to do stuff like this in the past.
I'll just put that in my folder of potentially destructive repressions. Oh, never mind, there's too much Toko Mondo in here.
Kyoko points out Sakura's shoes, which just happen to have yellow powder on them as well. Kyoko also points out that it appears that Sakura didn't suffer just one blow to the head, but two based on the head wound itself. And another interesting thing, both of Sakura's hands have no traces of blood on either of them. But before they can figure out more, the trial bell rings and they all assemble in the trial room. Monokuma laments on the fact that there's only 6 people left as the class trial begins. Hina, just like last time, immediately accuses people of committing the crime. This time, though, instead of just Hiro, it's him, Byakuya, and Toko. While they deny this, Makoto confirms with Hina the reason that she believes this is because Sakura told them to meet up. Makoto points out the candy wrapper the hero dropped when they were talking, and Hiro, being the complete idiot that he is, immediately backs himself into a corner as they argue about when he got the candy. He claims it was before seeing Sakura in the nurse's office, which is not true because Hina has all the candies and gave one to Sakura after they left the nurse's office. After that, he confesses to meeting with her but claims he didn't kill her. He then points out the magazine that has Toko's name written in blood in it.
Buddy, when did you see that? Because Hina didn't want you near the crime scene, and you couldn't have seen it when we discovered the body because you weren't there when we discovered the body.
With that argument shot down, he still blames Toko because of the magazine. But Kyoko and Makoto don't believe that Sakura was the one that wrote that message because her hands had no traces of blood. Hiro then fesses up that he was the one who wrote the message, and that he killed her.
Well, that was a fast trial. Drinks are on me, everyone. We're gonna need it.
Hiro explains that he did end up going to the meeting and ended up waiting for Byakuya and Toko with Sakura. She gave him the piece of candy and then they just waited in awkward silence. He then heard Sakura mutter something about ending things and he instantly got paranoid that she was gonna kill him. So when she wasn't looking, he grabbed one of the Monokuma bottles and smashed it over her head, which killed her. He then panicked and wrote Toko's name in a magazine on the table and left. Kyoko doesn't buy his story though. Especially since the magazine was found on the magazine shelf and not the table, but Hiro said he's pretty sure he just left it on the table. Byakuya believes that means that someone must have been in there before and after Hiro's visit. Kyoko Makoto believes it's Toko.
And Bingo was her name. Oh, I'm sorry.
Toko denies it and tries to pin Hiro as the murderer again, but Makoto points out that Sakura had 2 head wounds, so she could not have died from Hiro's singular blow. Kyoko points out that it must have happened on 2 separate occasions. Her evidence? That little experiment we did with the bottles. Since the shards ended up weighing more than the bottle that wasn't shattered, that should mean that the broken shards were actually 2 bottles. The person that attacked the second time had tried to clean up the broken pieces from their bottle along with the missing Monokuma figure, but must have left way too many pieces behind. Hiro also remembers that he went early to stake out the rec room and that he had seen Toko go into the rec room before Sakura went in, but when he went in, Toko wasn't there. Makoto remembers about the handprint inside of the locker in the rec room and assumes that's where Toko hid during Hiro's meeting with Sakura. Toko doesn't deny it anymore after this. She explains that she also went because she was afraid of what Sakura would do if she didn't show up. She had hidden the locker, saw Hiro do his thing, and put the magazine back on the shelf when he left. After she cleaned up Hiro's mess, Sakura woke up and Toko fainted because Sakura had a bunch of blood on her head from when Hiro hit her. She doesn't know anymore, but Genocide Jill does. Genocide Jill admits that she and Toko don't share memories, hence why they had to switch. Genocide Jill had woken up to Sakura, and Jill was startled to see her there covered in blood, so she grabbed one of the bottles and smashed it into Sakura again. Hina's already eager to start the vote, but Byakuya still has some questions, specifically about Toko's story. For example, if Sakura had died from the blow, why was she sitting upright in a chair when Genocide Jill woke up and attacked in front of the magazine shelf? I mean, the blood in front of the magazine shelf proves that Sakura was attacked right there. Genocide Jill also claims that she cannot move someone that big. There's also the matter of the locked room. And of course, there's no way Toko could have hidden in the locker and joined everyone because the locker was open when they found Sakura. But there is another way Sakura could have died. Vomiting blood. Or at least it's connected to her death somehow. Byakuya believes that Sakura was poisoned. His evidence is the Chem C9 found on the A shelf in the Chem lab. He says it's not a powerful poison, but it will still kill you if you drink an entire bottle of it. But since it was found on shelf A, he believes that the contents of the poison bottle and one of the bottles on shelf A were switched around. And to prove it, he drinks straight from the poison bottle.
Well, he's either going to get us closer to finding out who did it, or he's going to die. Either way, it's a win-win.
He doesn't die, which proves his point, meaning that empty protein bottle we found in the rec room had the poison in it. And Sakura most likely drank it, especially with how she was raving about how protein can help with aches and pains. But someone gave her a bottle full of poison instead. And Byakuya knows who it is based off of the footprints in the chem lab. But before he could say who it was...
It was me.
Hina, what the hell?
The footprints. They're mine.
I need an explanation and pronto.
So Byakuya expected this because the footprints were made by sneakers and Makoto and Hina are the only ones who wear them. That's why Byakuya forced Makoto to see if his shoes matched with the footprints. Combine that with the fact that Hina had been eager to get to the vote several times makes her very suspicious. Makoto does have a hard time believing this though because Hina and Sakura were close friends. Hina tells everyone what happened. She found Sakura in the rec room all banged up from both Hiro and Genocide Jill's attacks. Sakura asked Hina for the protein drink from the lab. When Hina went there, she decided to swap the powders and give her poison instead. Kyoko joins Makoto in the Hard Time Believing Club not because of them being close friends, but because of one other mystery we haven't solved yet. The locked room. Kyoko asks Hina how she did it, and then she gets defensive for some reason. Byakuya still believes Hina killed Sakura, but now Makoto is rushing to Hina's defense, this time realizing that it doesn't make sense. For example, if Hina was the killer, why did she leave such an obvious clue, her footprints, in the chem lab? So Kyoko asks Hina to go into more detail about switching the powders. So she explains that she went to shelf C, grabbed a bottle of poisonous powder, and dropped the bottle, spilling it everywhere. Then she grabbed another poisonous bottle and went to shelf A. She swapped the protein powder with the poison and left to go give it to Sakura. But she accidentally left the bottle with the protein powder in it, the poison bottle, on shelf A.
Cool. Why are there no footprints in front of shelf C?
This flusters Hina. and Byakuya in what is undoubtedly the most satisfying moment in the game. And what's just as satisfying is Kyoko has some new evidence, one that Byakuya himself gave to her. Inside the bottle that had the protein powder in it was a shard of glass that had sunk to the bottom. The shard of glass came from the window of the rec room door. So how did a shard from the rec room get inside of the bottle, especially when the bottle was found in the chem lab? Well, there can only be one explanation. The bottle with the protein powder was in the rec room when they discovered the body and was swapped out with the bottle that had the poison in it, which also explains why there was shattered glass underneath it. Oh yeah, and Byakuya is still trying to get a grip on everything.
Forget all-star apologies, this chapter should be called Byakuya gets his ass handed to him physically and mentally.
So now everyone's wondering why Sakura drank from the bottle of poison when it wasn't handed to her. Well, she could have drank it herself knowing it was poison. She went and got the bottle herself and dropped it, causing powder to go everywhere and spilling on her right shoe because she wasn't standing directly in front of it. Everyone's a bit in shock now that they realize that Sakura may have killed herself. But it also explains the locked room. And Hina was the one who swapped the bottles and powders, for that matter. She was standing by the door when they discovered Sakura's body. She picked up the poison bottle, said she was going to go get everyone else, went to the chem lab and swapped the powders, then got everyone else, and while they were busy looking at Sakura, Hina put the protein can on the ground.
So Hina, even though she wasn't the killer, sabotaged the investigation. Look, I know I said she was one of my favorite characters, but even they have their weak moments. Look at Kyoko earlier in this chapter. I guess this chapter should be called Your Favorite Characters Do Dumb Things. But at least Byakuya gets his ass handed to him both physically and mentally.
Speaking of which, Byakuya is still trying to figure out how Makoto was able to figure all that out when he couldn't. Kyoko already has an answer for him. His dismissal of other people's feelings, which Kyoko had already reprimanded him for earlier. Which again is very satisfying. Everyone votes for Sakura, and it's correct. Monokuma laments on how boring it was that they didn't have an actual murderer this time. But now Byakuya has a question for Hina. Why did she try to cover everything up? If her plan had worked, then she would have died along with everyone else. And her reason? She wanted everyone to die. Hina believes that because of their hatred and distrust of Sakura, it led her to commit suicide. Hina blames everyone for her death, even herself. Hina then pulls out a suicide note that Sakura left behind, which reads, "Such brutality has made me desperate, so instead of waiting to be killed, I'll do it by my own hand." Hina explains that Sakura was placing all the blame on herself after the incident with Genocide Jill. Sakura's friends were getting hurt as a result of her actions, so she felt like she had to take responsibility. She told Hina she was going to meet up with Hiro, Byakuya, and Toko because she still believed that she could get through to them because she believed that they were all friends. But we all know how that went down. Later, Hina found Sakura after that incident, and Sakura asked her to get some protein from the chem lab. Hina found Sakura's body moments later. Hina believed that Sakura died hating everyone and they pushed her into a corner and that people like them shouldn't be allowed to live. Then Monokuma does something unexpected. He pulls out Sakura's real suicide note. The one that Hina had was fake. Of course, Monokuma did it to spice things up. When they start accusing him of nearly derailing the class trial, he says he didn't really do anything. They all came to the same conclusion anyway, and any derailing was done by them. Monokuma then reads out the real suicide note. It's a bit long, so I'll summarize it. Basically, on the first night they were there, the mastermind went to Sakura and blackmailed her with the destruction of her family's dojo that's been around for many years in exchange for information on what's happening. And of course, murder. But they didn't expect that Sayaka would kick things off. However, as time moved on, and watching everyone try to find a way out, Sakura decided to go against the mastermind. However, her retaliation caused all the distrust, which was what the mastermind wanted. So she decided to uphold her end of the bargain and commit murder on herself. That way her dojo would be safe and all the sources of conflict would die with her as well. She didn't mind sacrificing herself in order to keep everyone else safe. And of course, she didn't tell Hina this because she knew Hina would try to stop her, and Sakura apologizes profusely in the note. She then encourages everyone to survive. Naturally, this changes Hina's mind about what she thought Sakura was thinking. And of course, Monokuma tries to blame Hina for trying to get everyone killed and Sakura's death was pointless. Makoto then fires back at Monokuma and claims that her death wasn't pointless. In fact, it reminded everyone that they are all friends united under one common goal: to take down the Mastermind. Then Byakuya announces that he's bowing out of the game that the Mastermind set up. He claims that seeing as how everyone's not afraid of the game anymore, it's no longer exciting.
It may seem shallow, but it does rally everyone against the Mastermind, because if he can turn against the game, everyone can.
This, of course, pisses off Monokuma, but he brushes it off because it's punishment time?
For who? You're just gonna take Sakura's corpse and karate chop it a bunch?
He also says he's not gonna kill any of the students, but he'd hate to let his punishment go to waste. So he's prepared a special guest. Okay, we got a construction theme this time. So who's the special guest? Wait, no! So, yeah, Alter Ego's dead now. And what's worse, Monokuma knew about him from the start. He didn't care that they discovered what was on the laptop, but connecting to the network was where he had to intervene. Speaking of which, Monokuma reveals that there's a PS on Sakura's note, which reads that the Mastermind has done something to them. What is it? Well, since Monokuma's reading the note, he stops before it's revealed, saying that it goes into spoiler territory.
Yeah, who would spoil the entire story of something, am I right?
Monokuma also realizes that there's still one line left in the note written to the Mastermind. Sakura claims not to just lay down and die and that she will fight the Mastermind. Monokuma just takes this as her being a sore loser and throws the note away. Hina apologizes to everyone profusely as they all head back up to Hope's Peak.
And then there were 6 as we close on Chapter 4. Oh wait, there's more.
Makoto goes to bed but is later woken up by Kyoko in his room. Apparently, he forgot to lock the door. She has a favor to ask Makoto. She wants him to help her find out what Sakura meant by that last line about fighting the Mastermind. She whispers to him to meet at the data center on the 4th floor. He heads up there, but Kyoko's not there and the data center's locked. As Makoto tries to open the door, Monokuma shows up and is pissed that Makoto's trying to break into a locked room. Then Kyoko shows up and he gets even more pissed. Kyoko and Makoto head out of there before Monokuma decides to punish them and they head back to their rooms. When Makoto asks what all that was about, Kyoko just says not to worry about it.
Well, that was a weird epilogue. That's the end of this chapter. I'm gonna go get something to drink. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Danganronpa. Mukuro Ikusaba. Mukuro Ikusaba. The 16th student, lying hidden somewhere in this school. The one they call the ultimate despair. Watch out for her.
Excuse me, the f***ing what?
Danganronpa.